So we continue our series, Figuring Out Faith, in which we're taking phrases from the hymn, Come Thy Fount, and we're looking at them through the lens of Peter's life. Today it is Streams of Mercy, Never Ceasing. Lamentations, which is a book in the Hebrew Scriptures that was written by the prophet Jeremiah, captures the concept, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Streams of mercy, never ceasing. It's a beautiful phrase. Water is a powerful source. My dad once said to me, son, water always wins. He wasn't just talking about the water damage, the damage that water does to wood baseboards when a rambunctious 8-year-old isn't very careful with bath water. Water erodes concrete. It can smoothen jagged rocks. It reshapes the earth. As we just heard at the baptismal font, water also sustains and refreshes and cleanses, and water gives life. Similarly, God's mercy is a persistent force in our life that, thank God, can wear down our resistance to good things. That God's mercy comes to us and cleanses us. That God's mercy comes to us continually and over a lifetime can take away our jaggedness that we have and our resistance to God's way. So as we look at John 13, we're going to be talking about these streams of mercy. But first, let's get into our text. This is the last meal that Jesus will have with the disciples. They have entered the house, and there's no servant who is there to wash the dirt off of their feet. And Jesus looks around the room, and none of the 12 disciples are going to volunteer to do it. You know, they're probably like hands in pockets, sitting there. So, John, what you been up to today? You know, body language, all of that. Then the Lord of the universe leaves the room, gets a basin, fills it with water, gets a towel, and then he takes the feet of that tax collector, takes the feet of that rambunctious, rebellious zealot, and takes the feet of some of those fishermen into his own, and he washes it. And as Jesus is washing, Peter is watching, and he grows more and more uncomfortable. I'm Peter. I'm the rock. I'm the rock. Jesus called me the rock, and upon me he will build the church. But why do I feel this way right now? Jesus is washing their feet, and he's eventually going to get to me. And Jesus said that he was the living water, and now he wants to drip water on me, but water will not touch me. I am the rock. You know, there's a reason why the game is called rock, paper, scissors. Because if it was rock, paper, scissors, water, you would always choose water, right? Water always wins. And you want to kind of like tell Peter, like, you better watch out, rock. Water always wins. Watch out. But why did Peter say what he said? Jesus, you will never wash my feet. In first century Judea, washing feet was a low status job that was reserved for servants. And Peter is uncomfortable that Jesus has upended the hierarchy. But Peter also realizes something very humbling. Jesus is doing for Peter what Peter was unwilling to do for other people. Why didn't I think of doing that? I've known these guys for 3 years. Jesus has always talked about serving others. As a matter of fact, that's all that Jesus has done as an example for 3 years. Why am I just now learning this lesson? So the guys walked into that room, and either they were oblivious to the necessity of service, or they refused to serve. And it wounds Peter's pride, and it causes self-doubt, and it humbles him. And pride and self-doubt are sides of the same coin. They're always related, because pride and self-doubt is actually how we deal with feeling vulnerable. When we feel vulnerable, we have a choice. When we feel vulnerable, we can get boisterous, like a puffer fish. You know, a puffer fish, like gets all spiny, right? You've met some people who are puffer fish, right? You're like, what in the world? Like if that person was an animal, puffer fish, or porcupine, right? And they're just kind of like, we say touchy, right? That person's touchy. They feel vulnerable. They feel like they always have to be on defensive. And it's because they feel at risk. So we can puff ourselves up. Isn't it interesting to say, like in pride, you puff yourself up. On the other hand, we can do the opposite. We can make ourselves low and small. We can think low of ourselves. In some cases, we're uncomfortable with being seen because we think that if we're seen in that moment, that it means that being seen means that the other person is going to not love us. So we just make ourselves small because we feel vulnerable. And some people are uncomfortable with being seen. So they speak in exaggerated words about their unworthiness. And it can seem like humbleness, can't it? Right? Oh, that person's so humble. But it's actually how they're dealing with the uncomfortableness of how they feel about themselves. But it's actually a cover for how they're avoiding the truth. So pride and self-doubt, different sides of the same coin. And if you allow yourself to sit where Peter sits, and you say that there's 24 feet in that room, and how long it takes to clean feet, and then Jesus is like, I got to go change this water. And then Jesus goes and gets clean water, and then comes back again. And then maybe he has to go get a new towel, and the dripping of the water. And you see he's eventually going to hold your feet in his hands. How comfortable would that make you feel about yourself, especially as you realize Jesus is doing for others, doing for me what I was unwilling to do for others. But did you notice in this passage that Jesus comes to Peter and the disciples and stoops low, not to condemn, but to care? Isn't that beautiful? There's no one like Jesus. There's no one like Jesus. Jesus cares. I mean, it's important to understand why Peter said the way that he says, and so that we can understand his words. But this passage is important because it teaches us who Jesus Christ is. So why could Jesus Christ do this? Did you know that Jesus Christ is not exempt from the same kind of issue in relationships that you and I are? Right, a couple of weeks ago in the forgiveness sermon, you know what we basically talked about? The relationships are dirty, right? They're not like clean and tidy, that it takes forgiveness, right? Jesus is not exempt from that. So how could Jesus go into that room and humble himself and serve other people? You know how can you do this? Because Jesus is not prideful, and Jesus doesn't think of himself too lowly. Jesus thinks about himself appropriately. Jesus is not like King Nebuchadnezzar II in the book of Daniel. You remember the book of Daniel? You remember Daniel, the lion's den? You remember Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego? Do you remember them? They're thrown into the furnace, but they don't die. That Nebuchadnezzar said, "Is this not the great Babylon that I have built for the glory of my majesty?" Jesus Christ did not say, "I am the king of creation, and you guys are here to serve me." As a matter of fact, in a different passage, Jesus Christ said, me, I, the Son of Man, the Messiah, did not come to be served, but to serve. What? That's not what you would expect. But Jesus didn't think too lowly of himself either. He didn't say, well, since I'm here to serve, that must mean I'm lower than you. He's defying the hierarchy, but he's also saying this. Well, he's defying the hierarchy because in another place he says, the first will be last and the last will be first. So he is saying, I am the Son of Man and I am the Son of God. I am your leader, but I am here to serve with you. And the very first Christians, our siblings in the faith, thought this idea was so beautiful that they put it to poetry and they sang about it in the first century. And when it's translated into English, it reads like this. Don't look out just for yourself, but take an interest in others too, just like Jesus, who though he was God, did not think equality with God was something to cling to. Instead, he gave up divine privileges and took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross. Therefore, God elevated him to the place of highest honor and gave him the name above every name, that at his name every knee should bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory not of himself, not the glory to himself, but to the glory of God the Father. Everything that Jesus Christ did was not for his own glory, but it was to glorify God. Water wins. As Jesus is washing the disciples' feet, all of this is washing over Peter's heart. And he's contemplating what it means that Jesus Christ would have streams of mercy just flowing all over him. And so he says, Jesus, you're going to wash my feet? And Jesus is like, yeah, I just did the other 11 guys. What do you think I'm doing here? And then Peter says, you will never wash my feet. The emphasis is not on my, the emphasis is on never. It's like Peter saying, no. But, you can't put that in a Bible text, right? Like, that doesn't sound very spiritual, does it? No. And Peter said, no. And then Jesus says, well, Peter, if I don't wash your feet, you can't have a share of me because this is just how the relationship works. Water's a part of it. It's going to get on you. And you may have picked up over the past several weeks with Peter, like there's an event or there's a teaching that happens and he just has his reflex. And then Jesus will teach. And then he's like, yeah, that's a good point. And then he changes. You know what the good thing about water is? It softens. That's a good thing about water, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe somebody should do a study one day of when Peter changes his mind. That would be a good study. I love Peter because he's like, ready, shoot, aim. And then Jesus is like, no. You got to aim like this. He's like, oh, okay. But he's willing for the streams of mercy to wash over him and to correct him. So Jesus says, water's part of the relationship. And Peter says, oh, then don't just wash my feet, like just wash over me. And then Jesus says, that's my Peter. There you are. And then he says basically this. Now, Peter, no. Someone who's taking a bath and then takes a trip, they don't have to take a bath all over again. They just need to clean their feet. That's what I'm doing here. So I'm only going to wash your feet, meaning you're okay. I've already cleaned you. You're my follower. But I'm just cleaning your feet. And what's so beautiful is that when Jesus stoops down in front of Peter, it's to pick Peter up. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity, isn't it? When do you see Jesus, when someone recognizes that they misunderstand something in the Gospels, or that they have really sinned, how many times do you see Jesus dogpile them? He's at Peter's feet, and Peter is brought low. He understands his misunderstanding, and then Jesus stoops down and picks him up. I love this. And then Peter's tone changes immediately. And you know why? I think that Jesus did that because he knows, as the text says, what's about to happen. Not long before this, Jesus has said to Peter, "You are acting just like Satan. Get out of my way." So Peter needs to know once again, I've cleansed you. The streams of mercy have cleaned you. Just like the dirt on your feet, my grace and mercy have washed over you, and you're okay. And Peter is about to also experience the betrayal of Judas. And so he needs Peter to be the rock of the church. And then you may notice, and I'm going to say this in the most complicated way possible, Jesus, you may have noticed, changes the conversation a little bit from Peter's body to the body of the disciples and Peter's feet to Judas. Did you see that? Let me see if I can round this up real quick. Peter, I have washed all of you, your body, but part of you, singular, is unclean, your feet. I have washed all of you, the disciples, yet one of you, plural, is unclean, and that's Judas. Does that make sense? But Judas doesn't just betray Jesus, he betrays his friends as well. And Peter's going to be beset by his own failures and the betrayal of his friends. And he needs to know that streams of mercy are going to help him in his heartache and his grief and the pain that he feels. And that is a message that Judas refuses to hear. And instead of being softened by water, Judas's cold heart freezes. And it busts him open. And it busts him open in a way that he despairs. And then he takes his own life. It's really sad because the streams of mercy were there for him just like it was for anyone else. As we come to the table in just a few moments, let's think about streams of mercy for us. The streams of mercy are so powerful, so good for us. You know, I'm realizing as I'm preaching this would be, streams of mercy would be such a good summertime sermon. It's really hard to think about refreshing streams right now, isn't it? But they are so good, and they kind of move. Think of it, in my mind, the streams of mercy also flow like the tide. When we're low, either through fear, failure, or just the facts of our bad actions, the gospel of Jesus Christ comes to us and says, you are a beloved child of God, and for you, Jesus Christ died, and for you, he prays. Like Lamentation says, the steadfast love of God never ceases. Never ceases. And one of the things that you can think about is this, that God cares for you in so many ways, even in ways that you would not care for other people. Have you ever been surprised by the care of God? He forgives you. He welcomes you. He cares for you. He prays for you, listens to you, and serves you. God's mercy never ceases. Jesus says, I've set an example for you. So the mercy that comes to you is to flow through you. And then when we are headstrong and prideful, it brings us back down and says, beloved child of God, you are created in the image of God, and you are also immortal. And all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and we all need a Savior who will wash us clean. We all need a Savior who will take the basin and the towel and the water and cleanse us. So you have been cleaned by that water, by that man who welcomes you all, each one of you, to the table. So as we come today, let's eat the bread at his table, and let's drink from the streams of mercy once again.